Ooh, made it. All right, so when your assay is not working and you don't know why, generally it's because you have bad pipette technique. So it's really important to make sure that everything you're doing with your pipettes here is as accurate and as consistent as possible. So let's talk a little bit about those pipettes so that we know what we're doing. We have everything from small all the way down to 0.2 microliters, tiny, tiny little volume, up to as big as 10 milliliters. When you set your pipette, this is the big guy, it goes from 1 to 10. You want to make sure that you're twisting to the correct amount you want. This is 3 milliliters. If I go to here, it's not 3 milliliters. It's got to be exact. It doesn't really matter the brand you have, but you still need to have good technique, and these technique skills are transferable across many different brands. So if we're going to look at, let's look at this one that's 100 microliters to 1 milliliter. So it says right here where it is. I've got it set at 1. You'll have 2 stops. So there's a 1 stop and a 2 stop. The 1 stop, that's 1 milliliter exactly. If you go past the 2nd stop, you're going to pull up more volume than you mean to. The reason we have the 2nd stop is so you can fully eject all of your liquid out of your tip. But if you go to that 2nd stop before you pull up, you're going to be inaccurate. When you set your tips on, so we have this guy goes with the 1 mil, this pink goes with the smallest, and you've got the yellows in between. When you set your tip, you want to make sure you seat it strongly because it's going to pull a vacuum. If you don't have this well set, so there's my ejector right there, but if you don't have this well set, you're again not going to pull up the volume you think you're pulling up. You want to make sure it's nice and tight. You can always hand tighten it if you need to, if you don't set it on, but I usually set it on pretty strongly to be able to pull. If in doubt, so let's say I want to pull up 20 microliters. This can go from 2 to 20. This can go from 20 to 200. I'm always going to pick the smaller pipette when available so that I can, because the smaller ones are always going to be more accurate. These tips go, goes to 200 microliters. This goes to 300. I'm always going to pick the smaller tip because the smaller tip is going to be more accurate. So if I want to go to 20, always check to make sure. Never trust people. Sometimes they leave it on the wrong volume. Don't trust yourself. Sometimes you leave it on the wrong volume. You want to make sure that it goes exactly at where you want it to be. Almost obsessive with how you do your pipetting. Right at 20, not at 20 and a little more, not at 20 and a little less, right at 20. Set your tip. Make sure it's nice and tight. And then you're ready to go. Multi-channels are, again, this crosses over. If I'm going to pick 30 microliters, I'm going to go with the smaller guy rather than the big guy. But multi-channels, this is a 12 channel. You can use 12 or 8 depending on what your assay needs. But again, you want to make sure you set that well. Oh, look, I didn't do it very well. Set it on there. And with multi-channels, you really want to make sure that you hand tighten these so that they are all going to be set correctly for when you pull up all that volume. Again, 1 stop, 2 stop. That's all there is to it. So one of the easiest ways to tell if you're pipetting consistently and if your pipette itself is accurate is to use a scale and to pipette liquid and measure how much your liquid weighs. So I've got this set at 1 mil for right now. I'm going to add my weigh boat, tear it out. And then I'm going to that first stop. And should be about 1 gram. This has methylene blue in it, so it's a little heavier, but you get the idea. If you instead go to that second stop, or even just a little bit, so here, we're gonna go to the second stop. You see you pull up some extra that you don't mean to, and then you pull up your 1 milliliter. You will see when you weigh it, that it's far more than 1 gram. And so you can do this over and over and over again to see if you're consistent. Now that you've gotten your pipette technique down and you have a nice, slow, even pipetting, let's talk about some common problems or pitfalls. If you pipette too quickly, your liquids sometimes can jump. If liquids are cold, they can jump, and you'll end up with bubbles. So you always want to check your tip and make sure the volume that you're pulling up is exactly what you think it is and doesn't cause bubbles or jumps. If your tip isn't completely in the liquid, it can also cause some bubbles, so you always want to check those things. Methanol, and this is really true for any alcohol, but methanol is what we're using here, is notorious for dripping and for creating bubbles when you pipette. So you can see here, all I've done here is pull up a set volume, about 500 microliters, and held it, and it's dripping out of the tip. And so you really want to be careful when you're pipetting with methanol, and here I'll show you it'll bubble out of the tip too. I'm just holding the pipette steady, not pulling anything up yet. And so whenever I use methanol in my videos, you'll see me pipette up and down several times until I no longer get those bubbles. And so here I've done it many, many, many times, rinsed the tip out lots, up and down, up and down, up and down, and I check. And at this point, there's no more bubbles coming out. I'm good to go. Let's talk about pipetting viscous liquids. You could use these as detergents or cryoprotectants. Sometimes antibody solutions have these. And if you're not careful and slow, because they are so viscous and sticky, they can jump and you can pull up your tip out of the liquid before you get the entire volume. Here, I'm going real slow, but still I pulled it up too early and you can see a bubble there. You really have to be patient when you're pulling up and also when you're ejecting to make sure that you get everything out of that pipette tip and that it doesn't, because it will cling to the sides. Even here, you have a little bit of bubbling there. It's really important when you're pipetting with viscous liquids not to stick your tip in too deep. So here I've put my tip all the way to the bottom, and as you can see, there's a lot of that viscous liquid still stuck to the outside of the tip. That's not the volume I'm trying to get. So that I've just put on, that's extra that was stuck to the side. And here's the tiny volume that I want. So instead, you put your tip just at the surface, barely touching. Pull up what you need, and then I drag the tip up the side of whatever the container is so that everything on the outside will drip down. And then when I go to pipette out, I get the exact volume that I'm trying to pipette without error and extra stuck to the outside. When using a multi-channel, you want to make sure that all of your pipette tips pull up evenly. So here when I pull it up, I always check to make sure I see them all aligned. If you look and you find that they're not aligned, it could be that your pipette tip is not seated very tightly on there, or you popped up and didn't get a good pull. Either way, it's not even.